All right, so welcome everyone to Introduction to LEED for Homes version 4, what is new, what is different compared to 2008. This course is approved for 1 hour in continuing education units, specifically under LEED for Homes, GBCI, AIA, HSW, NARI Green, AIBD, Certified Green Professional, as well as maybe approved for your local state-based design or contractor license. I am your moderator today. My name is Brett Little, and I'm the Executive Director here at the Green Home Institute. The Green Home Institute is a nonprofit with a mission to empower people to make healthier and more sustainable choices in the renovation and construction of the places we live. Got to give out a big thanks to our Platinum Plus sponsor, Anderson Windows. Check them out for all of your fenestration needs for both new and existing homes. Do you support greener, healthier homes? Do you support these sessions? Become a member today at the Green Home Institute and get discounts to other training sessions and green certifications. All right, well, this is the Introduction to LEED for Homes version 4 session with Jay Hall. But before I introduce Jay Hall here, I wanted to recognize some of the projects, at least that we've worked with, and there have been many others that have achieved LEED V4. This is a really neat project. It's a platinum project up in Quebec in Canada. A new construction home here. You can check it out at ecohome.net. One real cool thing about this project is the way they had set up their homeowner's manual. It's all online, all done with videos to help the homeowner understand how to improve the home and what to do to maintain it. It's all in French, so you may not understand it, but it's a really cool idea that you can check out there on their website. I also have to give a huge shout out to our local Kent County Habitat for Humanity chapter here. I think they're going to have 150 certified LEED projects. I think they're already on, they'll be going on nearly 10 certified LEED V4 projects. They'll be starting a rehab here pretty soon. So a huge thanks to their support, to the support of the Weggy Foundation for allowing that to happen, and Green Builder Media for recognizing what they've done. All right, so with that, a real quick introduction. Jay Hall is going to be your presenter and the developer of this session today. Jay has 30 years of experience in market transformation, sustainable design of buildings, and energy efficiency. He's an expert in building energy modeling, green building verification. Jay earned his PhD in mechanical engineering from Duke University. In 1989, he began his career with ICF International as a consultant working on EPA's Energy Star market transformation programs. Since then, Jay has been heavily involved in LEED for Homes, overseeing the certification reviews for the LEED for Homes program, been involved in Green Communities, Home Depot Foundation Awards of Excellence Committee, Habitat for Humanity International Partnership for Sustainable Building Advisory Committee, and the Healthy House Institute Advisory Board as well. Jay is a LEED faculty, born and raised in Ontario, Canada, and for the past 25 years, him and his wife have resided with his 2 sons in Annapolis, Maryland. So with that, take it away, Jay.
Thank you, Brett. I hope everyone can hear me. Hello and welcome. Glad you could attend. We have a good turnout. I want to thank the Green Home Institute for sponsoring this event, for setting it up. Couldn't do this without their help. And I want to thank you with your busy schedules for taking the time to join the webinar today. I want to talk about 2 things, big picture. One is, to help you get a sense of, what do you know about LEED for Homes version 4? But most importantly, how will it work for your projects? This is an introductory or overview of LEED for Homes V4. To be very clear, Brett and I did this same intro 2 full years ago, and a lot has transpired since then. So we decided to get together and do a complete update, so that's what we're here to do today. The basic learning objectives for this webinar are shown on the slide. What I want to do is talk about changes to the certification process and tools, changes to the rating system, and how those changes are going to impact your projects, or at least begin to help you figure that out. And again, where you can learn more about V4. So as I scan, there's a few experienced folks on the line, but it sounds like the majority are at the beginning of trying to get their heads around V4, so you're in the right place. So again, just big picture, I've broken the presentation up into 4 sections, so hopefully be fairly self-evident as we go through them. So let's start with the fundamental question, why are changes needed? Sorry, the advance is just... So the first thing that I think is important to bear in mind is that, as the name implies, the current version of the rating system, version 2008, was developed quite a while ago. And when you consider all of the standards and programs that are referenced at that time, a lot has evolved since that time. And so recognizing that everything else has changed, I think pretty clearly it's time for LEED to catch up with those changes. So that's one of the major things that's been addressed. The second major goal that USGBC had was to improve the alignment of LEED. There are 4 major categories of LEED rating systems and as many as 10 application areas within them. And so one of the things that USGBC wanted to do was to get similar terminology, similar requirements where appropriate in these different rating systems, to get them all on the same 100-point scale, and to get, as far as residential is concerned, LEED for homes and LEED for homes mid-rise on the same rating system. One of the other major goals was just an overall improvement in the rating systems to address new market segments. So you might be surprised to know that the mid-rise program was never actually balloted in USGBC, so technically up until recently it's been a pilot. And so in V4 it's the first time that mid-rise is going to be a balloted rating system within the LEED world. And there's also been some major effort put into an existing multifamily program as well. There are some new credit categories, and I'll show you some specifics on what that looks like in just a minute. And we have several new measures, including both prerequisites and credits, and I'll show you specifically what those look like as well. But obviously, as things have evolved over time, there's a need to raise the bar, and I think all of these changes are helping to make that happen. And then, of course, what they also wanted to do was to go back and clean up or improve the tools that exist. As curiosity for you, on the right-hand side of the screen are 2 new logos, and there's a link at the bottom to the new logo use guidelines that USGBC has rolled out in June 2015, as the date shows. And what is curious is they want to have these logos used universally across all the programs. And for the relevance to LEED for homes, the top logo is the one that's intended to be used now for marketing purposes when you have a project under construction, with the appropriate language underneath that says that this is for a project that's currently under construction and expecting to get LEED certification. I suspect that's something many of you may not have heard yet. I want to show it to you. The other major changes, there's a new workbook. The checklist is now being called a workbook, and there is 1 tab per credit category in that workbook. So it's a major restructuring of the checklist and what it looks like. There are less forms in terms of the submittal package. The accountability forms, or the AFs, have been removed, and the durability evaluation form has been removed, and there is a much more streamlined approach to dealing with the durability credit itself. And of course, going along with all of these changes is a new reference guide. I'll give you some information on that going forward as well. So with regards to all of these changes, one of the things that USGBC always does is beta testing or pilot testing. And specifically for LEED for homes, you can see here for single-family projects, there were 107 registered beta projects, 17 of which have been certified, and 1,171 registered multifamily projects, of which 55 have been certified to date. These beta projects are extremely important for the testing, and as the little icon on the right-hand side shows, to try and get the bugs out. So we want to clarify what all the new language means, flesh out the verification methods for some of the new credits, and of course make sure that the tools are working the way that they're intended. So I want to switch and talk about the second of the presentation here, focusing on the process changes. And in the next segment, we'll get to the rating system itself. This is a graphic that I've developed for my clients just to help them understand in the blue arrows at the top what are the key steps that have to happen. But also there are a number of specific things that need to happen with respect to each of those major tasks. So this is not something I want to go into right here and now, but just to kind of highlight the fact that there's a lot involved in the process of getting a home certified, and a lot of things have been adjusted and refined for V4. Just in terms of the overall rollout schedule, currently we are in a place where you can now use V4. The V4 resources are available, and of course there's lots of opportunity to learn about V4. But the key date is October 31st. That's when the V4 rating system must be used for any project that's registered after that date. So I think what's really critical is if you want to continue using the current rating system, be sure to get your projects registered before that date. One other thing that I intended to address, but quite frankly I just don't have it here now, but all of the credentials associated with LEED for Homes are being updated to align with V4, and so those changes are in process specifically for the LEED AP homes and for the Green Raider. And my understanding is to date those changes haven't been put in place, but they are coming imminently, and when we get together in May, I'll provide more specifics on those dates as they become available. There's a great document called the Guide to Certification. I wanted to make sure that you were all aware of that. The link is shown at the top of the page in blue there. And the document used to be downloadable, but now it's actually right online on that site. But it's about a 5-6 page document, and it's really got a nice step-by-step format in terms of exactly how do you go through. And if you can see in the small print on the left-hand sidebar of the image that's there, you can see the major categories that are discussed within this document. So how to register a project, how to get it verified, what the review process is, how to certify a project, what the fees are, and what resources and tools are available. So again, if you're not familiar with this, if you haven't found it, please get a hold of it. At the very bottom of the document, I wanted to blow this up for you. There is a section on resources and tools, and each of these are hyperlinks which allow you to go directly to each of these resources. One of the things that USGBC has done a really good job in the refinement of their website is to simplify the web links and sort of categorize where things are. And again, this particular information here is a nice clean place to guide you to where you can get whichever reference resource you're looking for. There we go. The checklist itself is available at the link that I'm showing here. Now this is the simplified version, which is called the scorecard, and so I'll just toggle ahead here. This is the document. It's an Excel file that would be downloaded from that prior link. This one isn't particularly useful or commonly used currently. I suspect possibly during the early discussions of a project, this one might become increasingly more valuable, given that the new workbook is much more comprehensive and a little bit unwieldy to put in front of a new client. So maybe going forward, this might be a better place to start with new projects. The more detailed version is available at this link, if you haven't found it. This takes you to, as it says, a sample of the workbook. And if you look at the date on it, it's dated October 2014. This was the most current version I could find. I know that there have been substantial updates made At this point in time, the policy is that the only way that you can get the most current version of the LEED V4, LEED for Homes V4 workbook is to register a project, and then it will send you a version for that registered project. That is their policy at this time, so this sample version is the only one that you can quickly get your hands on if you want to start perusing through it. Other than that, you have to get a project registered to get the real deal. This is a snapshot of the very first tab in the new V4 workbook. You can see in the lower left, we're on the instruction tab. And this is similar to the current summary page where you put in the basic information of the project, and it does scroll on down a little bit. But most importantly, what I wanted to highlight for you is that each of the credit categories is in fact a separate tab within this workbook. So in some ways it's similar, except the checklist, instead of all being on one tab, it's now broken out across multiple tabs. So at some level, it does make it easier to get to each specific credit category. But on the other side of the coin, it's difficult to show somebody overall how they're doing other than with the scorecard, which is shown at the lower left as the second tab in this document as well. This is another web link that I tripped over. I wasn't aware that it existed, so I thought I would share it with you. In here are what are called form updates, and by forms, what they're really talking about is V4 calculators. And so there's a search window, and so I just typed in homes, and when I did that, it brings up 4 specific homes-related calculators and the most updated or current version of those calculators as required or needed to work on V4 projects. So I haven't seen that. Again, just trying to guide you to that as something that you will find useful and helpful. And here's a little bit more information on the reference guide itself. You can see the price listed there, and also note that there is an e-document version that you can use, and I think a lot of folks are finding that very helpful because it's obviously searchable as opposed to the hard copy where you can mark it up to your heart's extent. So whichever way you want to go at it, 2 versions available, and a great resource when you're trying to get familiar with the new stuff that's going on. So having said that, let me dive into what the rating system changes look like. But again, let me just remind you, this is a brief summary, an overview, and in the next 9 webinars that we do in May, we'll be going category by category through the rating system. But before we do that, let me throw you a little bit of a question, a trick question on V4. Some of you are familiar with V4, so you will know the answer. Obviously, we haven't talked about any of this content specifically, but I just wanted to put this out there to challenge your thinking a little bit to realize that what we're familiar with in the current rating system is going through some changes. And I wanted to put in front of you that there's actually a little typo here. The compartmentalization is a separate entity. So there actually should be E, as it's shown on the right-hand side of the page. So just wanted to pause for a minute and let you just ponder, what these changes are, some of the big ones for low-rise multifamily projects. And if you think about if you do work on low-rise multifamily projects, what does this mean for the projects that you're working on? Obviously, there are points available for doing these things, but for some of these, there's prereqs associated as well. So obviously, this implies some changes in the way that we are used to doing things. Restricted only to talking about tobacco smoke on smoking, but the prerequisites in the mid-rise program deals with the common area versus the apartments or both, and now we're bringing that issue into low-rise multifamily projects. Have we got results yet, Paul? Brett?
Yep, in 5 seconds here.
The compartmentalization in mid-rise projects currently has a metric of CFM per square foot of envelope area as opposed to the traditional CFM 50 or the ACH 50 that we've been using in the regular V 2008 rating system. All right, so it looks like the majority of people have no idea because it's new to them, and that's understandable. And there's kind of a trickle of other answers, but there was a few that also went with the all of the above, which is the correct answer. And again, I know I didn't present this information to you, but what I did want to do was just challenge your thinking a little bit, like what do these changes really mean going forward? At the very high level, there's currently 109 measures in the current rating system. It's not points, it's the number of actual line item measures in the checklist. And you can see here that there's been a fairly substantial number removed, a very large number changed, relatively few that stayed exactly the same. Some of them have been moved, and there's a few new ones. And so ultimately, with all of that, what we end up with is 52 measures, unique credits within the V4 rating system. Hopefully this kind of paints a high-level picture of the level of change that we're talking about from the current system to V4, all of which, to some degree, raises some anxiety. Change is always difficult to adjust to, but at another level, a thing I wanted to share with you is as I spent more and more time going through this, I'm finding that I'm getting increasingly more and more comfortable and that the impacts aren't as great as I have earlier been thinking. I have some very specific slides to show you at the end here that I think will help you to get to that same place. But again, let me just stay at a very high level here and talk about some of the basic structure changes in V4. The goal was to get all the rating systems to 100 points. There's actually technically 110 points where there are 6 points for the innovation category and 4 for regional priority. So we've moved from 136 down to 110, so that's a fairly major shift. The credit names are reasonably familiar, but the order has been completely shuffled. And generally, you'll see that the prerequisites are pulled out in front. So within each credit category, you have prerequisite 1, prerequisite 2, prerequisite 3, etc. And then after that, you have the credits, credit 1, credit 2, credit 3. Now, having said that and put numbers in there, one of the other major changes is that the credits and the prerequisites are not numbered. They're listed there by the name. And the thinking at USGBC, as I'm hearing it, is that we will refer to these credits not by number, but by the name. So for that reason, when you look at the checklist or the rating system, you will see that there are not any numbers associated with each prereq and credit. The single-family, low-rise, and mid-rise have all been combined in the same rating system, in the same workbook. And the very last line on this slide, it's really the bottom line, and I think we've heard this from USGBC repeatedly, and everything I'm seeing indicates this is generally true, that most projects will lose about 1 certification level. One of the other major changes is the home size adjustment no longer exists as a threshold adjustment in the rating system. Having said that, there is still a home size adjustment. It exists in the energy category inside the overall energy performance credit. And you can see here that for single-family projects, that there are 2 pathways, the HERS pathway where there is a home size adjustment, or the LEED energy budget where there is not a home size adjustment. So depending on which pathway, you would have to use the home size adjustment or not. And on the mid-rise pathway, there is also a home size adjustment that gets mixed in with the energy score. You'll note there on the slide, I'm saying the home size adjustment is going from -15 to +15. There actually isn't a cap on either end. So if you've got something very small, you actually could have a home size adjustment of less than 15. And if you have a project that's very large, it could actually have a home size adjustment much larger than 15. In the current system, the low end of the home size adjustment for small homes is capped at 10. But in the V4 system, it actually is a sliding scale that is uncapped. So I just want to highlight once again, when you look at the checklist and the workbook, you are not going to see credit numbers. You're only going to see the name. For ease of communicating in this webinar and in the future webinars, I am boldly creating my own numbering system just to sort of ease the process of identifying specific credits. But what I also wanted to highlight here, for example, if you look under the Sustainable Sites category, you can see that we have SSP1 and SSP2, followed by SSC1, C2, and C3. And generally, that's the way that all of the credits are structured. But again, I want to highlight, this is something that I'm doing for the purposes of this webinar. When you look at the checklist, you're not going to see that numbering there. In terms of the overall certification levels, this slide is a little bit busy, but if you just stay with the points column for each, what I want to highlight in the current rating system, you'll see that the certification levels are spread out by 15 points. And again, at the bottom, we have 136 points. So we go 45, 60, 75, 90, and 136 total. In V4, you can see that the first three categories are spread out by 10 points. They're actually closer together, thereby suggesting that it would be easier to move from certified to silver to gold. But then notice that there's a wider gap, a 20-point gap, as you move from gold to platinum. And when you look at the percent of the total points column for the 2008 versus V4, generally you'll see they line up reasonably similarly, with the exception of platinum. And again, as I said, because there's a higher bar there, platinum will be a little bit more difficult to achieve in V4. Not substantially, but somewhat. Also, I just want to provide sort of this visual arrangement of the credit categories. Generally, everything looks fairly similar, but you can see that there is a little bit of change going on. And hopefully this helps to clarify in a simple way what those changes at the category level look like. There are two prerequisites that have been removed. I'm not going to spend much time talking about these, but when we come back in May in the MR category, we'll obviously highlight these. And then similarly, we have 6 new prerequisites that have been added. And this is extremely important that you get comfortable with these new prerequisites from the fact that prerequisites are poison pills, as you well know. And so it's key that all projects are able to successfully achieve these prerequisites. So maybe this is your first piece of homework to go and get as comfortable as you can with these 6 new prereqs. Other major changes in the process of squeezing the rating system from 136 down to 110 points. There was a fairly large number of credits that were removed, and many of these were commonly achieved credits, which was one of the ways that we were originally told that they were going to try to make this compression happen. The ones that I highlighted in purple text here are what I call easy wins, and as a reviewer, generally I would say almost every project was able to achieve these credits or credits similar to these. And up at the top, you can see I'm showing that they're worth a total of about 7 points. So again, what this says is that for a project under the current rating system moving to V4, these 7 points that were readily achieved and commonly achieved are no longer available. As you look at the list even further, there's a full tally there of 21 points. If you were working on a project that was pushing a little harder and achieving some of these other credits. again, all of them are no longer available, making it that much more difficult to achieve points. And again, we will spend time in May talking about those in detail. There are also new credits in V4. So here's the short list. These credits are worth about 10 points. So this is a potential. So in the previous slide, we were losing points. Here's an opportunity to get some of those points back by doing some of these new things. And so this would probably be your second homework assignment as you're trying to get familiar with V4, is to take a look at these new credits and become familiar with what they are and whether they would be achievable for your projects. As the focus of the rating system in the energy category shifts from the current system to V4, we're moving from Energy Star version 2 to Energy Star version 3. And with that, there are things that were previously worth points, which now become sort of prerequisites under EAP1, achieving the basic energy performance aligning with Energy Star version 3. And there are also 3 new credits that actually align with what Energy Star requires, but they are in fact worth points. So there's actually a couple of points that are available above and beyond the fact that you've achieved the prereq of Energy Star. There's actually a couple of points that you can get in your account just from getting to Energy Star, let alone going above and beyond. Similar to the polling question we had earlier, there are new credits associated with low-rise multifamily. I'm highlighting those here, so we've kind of covered this territory, but once again, just wanted to kind of highlight these are some of the things to be paying attention to. One of the other new places where you can achieve points is called regional points, or RP category, how I abbreviate it. And when I went in and looked up, there's actually an online database where you can go in and you say where you're located, and the regional points, as the name implies, do vary regionally, where you can get credit. And so this is for where I live on the East Coast, Mid-Atlantic. And what I'm showing you here are 2 basic types of regional point credits, color-coded them. So the orange ones are basically where you've done a really good job and you've achieved all of the points within that particular credit. So for example, compact development, if you achieved full points under compact development, you could get effectively a bonus point in the RP category for having done so. Similarly for non-toxic pest control, sorry, that should be typo, non-toxic pest control. If you achieve full points there, you would be able to get a bonus point under regional points as well. The ones that are shown in dark green text are a little bit different. In those ones, if you achieve the threshold that's shown there, so in site selection there's 8 points available. If you achieve at least 5, then you would qualify for a regional point. Similarly, if you looked at exceeding Energy Star version 3 in the energy category, if you get more than 15 of the 29 points, that would qualify you for an RP point. So there are up to 4 RP points available, and as you look at the list, you can sort of get a sense of maybe 1 or 2 or 3 or possibly even 4 of those might be available for your projects, depending on which of these credits you'd be choosing to pursue. All right, so let's go to our third poll. And again, I'm throwing you a question, which is a trick question, admittedly. But what I want to do is kind of plant the seed that there's a lot of things that we need to be paying attention to. And this is a list of some of the changes that are coming in V4. And Brett, I'm going to simplify this and not even go through the process of doing the poll, just because, again, it is a trick question. And either you know the answer or you don't, because we haven't covered this material. But the reality of it is the correct answer is F, all of the above. And so as you go down the list here, you can see there are some things that are unfamiliar territory and things that we will have to get used to. I may draw your attention to item E as a curiosity. We're used to doing lighting as the percent of the fixtures or lamps that are high efficacy or highly efficient. So now what the expectation is that there would be a watt per square foot calculation for the installed lights in the home. So that's a fairly substantial change, and it's going to require a little bit of an adjustment. All right, so let me switch ahead. Try. There we go. All right, so what I'd like to do now is show you a couple of examples of how, excuse me, how projects score in V4. Partly based on my experience as a reviewer, I've broken the LEED for Homes market up into several different categories, and I'm just going to go through them one by one here and show you how a typical project in that category scores. And I want to be very clear here that by typical, what I'm talking about is a middle-of-the-road project of this particular type, and you'll see what I'm saying when we get there. And just to try and give you a snapshot of what it looks like. So it's a little bit busy here, but just bear with me. On the left-hand side, there's a blue bar for how a project under the current rating system would score. Blue signifies silver, as shown on the right-hand side of the slide. And on the gray bar on the right-hand side of the plot represents how that same project doing exactly the same measures as it is under the current system would score under V4. So as I've indicated, there's a number of additional points that are available, so there certainly is the opportunity to do new and different things. But if you scored a project under the current system and then you rescored it under V4, looking only at the measures that the project was currently doing under the current rating system, what would it look like? How would it score? And that's what I'm showing here. The axis, the vertical axis that I'm using here, you can see that it says percent of total points available. And the reason why I'm using that axis is it normalizes the fact that the current rating system is 136 points, the V4 system is 110 points. So by looking at it in the context of percent of total points available, it normalizes those two scales and allows you to visually see side by side. The other thing I want to draw your attention is I've got horizontal lines going across at the certified silver, gold, and platinum level. And you'll notice that there's kind of a discontinuity downwards on the left-hand side relative to the right-hand side. So the right-hand side percent of total points, the thresholds that are shown for platinum, gold, and silver and certified are the same. Those don't move. The reason that they move up and down on the left-hand side of the plot is because of the home size adjustment. So that's built into the threshold, and I'm accounting for that. So I guess the last piece of information, you can see this market segment that the slide is for is a project that's an affordable home, in other words, smaller than average, located in a suburban location. And down in the lower left corner, you can see the size and the energy performance assumptions I'm making for that project. So take that exact same project under the current system, scoring silver, just slightly over silver, rescoring it. You can see that the percentage of total points is about the same, but it's fallen roughly about one certification level from slightly above silver to slightly above certified. And that's somewhat typical of what we see. But anyways, this is the first example that I just wanted to show you, and hopefully it doesn't look too scary. That's a level of change that seems to be what we would expect, based on everything that we've heard. So here's another example. I'm moving now to single-family production homes, and this is more of a rural location. Production homes are typically built on a large plot of land, which is outside of an urban area. And so in the lower left, you can see the assumptions I've made for this particular example about the size of the home and what the typical energy performance of such a home would be. And what you can see here is a fairly sharp drop-off. It is roughly a 1 certification level drop. But unfortunately, what you see is that because the baseline, the current project, wasn't getting up to silver, when it experiences that 1 certification drop, it's coming in below certified. So obviously there's a challenge there. As I've indicated, there are additional points available that you could close that gap and get that project to certified. Again, this is probably one of the more challenging market segments to deal with in V4. They're going to have to work just a little bit harder. So let me switch gears. Example number 3 is a single-family custom home. And again, I've located this in a suburban location. The size information disappeared off the lower left. This was about a 4,500 square foot home with 5 bedrooms and an energy performance about a HERS 55. And you can see it's a 1 certification drop in terms of the drop in the height of the bar. It looks fairly substantial. But you can also see that it's coming just below gold to just below silver. So with a few additional things, that project could actually climb back up to silver, and that wouldn't necessarily be that big of a jolt then going from the current system to V4. Next example is going to low-rise multifamily, an affordable project. So again, smaller than average. Located in an urban environment. Not all low-rise multis are in an urban environment, but this particular example, so we're talking about roughly an 800 square foot home with an average of 1.5 bedrooms, so a mix of maybe 1 and 2 bedrooms, and a HERS 72. And you can see the bars are about the same height, and it is coming in just slightly above goals on the current system and slightly below goals. And so again, with a few additional measures, that project may readily be able to actually achieve goals in V4. Next example, same market, low-rise multifamily, but going to market rate in an urban location. So if you look at the size, it's slightly larger, but the same level of HERS performance or energy performance. And in this case, the gap's a little bit bigger, but again, that gap could be closed. But as we've been told, there is a 1 certification drop, and so no major surprises there. Jumping to mid-rise multifamily, again, the bars here are about the same size. This is the affordable scenario. And so in this particular case, we are dropping from just below gold to just barely silver. So in some ways, they are both in the silver category, but because the left-hand bar is almost gold, it's effectively a 1 certification drop. And then the last example I have for you here is a market rate mid-rise in an urban location. And so in this particular case, it's scoring a little bit worse, partly because of the larger size. And the other thing that's happening actually on the prior slide and this one is the mid-rise projects are no longer being scored as performance relative to standard 90.1 2007. The V4 projects are scored relative to standard 90.1 2010. There's a 5 to 10% increase in the level of energy improvement in 2010 versus 2007. So basically what that means is a project under the current system is going to perform at a less, there'll be less energy points available for it because of the more aggressive standard, unless they work a little bit harder. Again, we'll go into that in a lot more detail in the follow-up webinars. Just want to kind of give you a quick intro to that. This is an example that I used 2 years ago, and I think it tells an interesting story. If you took a small, affordable urban project and you accomplished the 17 required prerequisites, And you did just the measures that are shown here. So by being in an urban location, the LL or LT points, you're getting full points. You've got no garage, you've got no fireplace, you're achieving Energy Star. You're getting a substantial home size adjustment because it is a smaller than average home. Just this small set of measures here would get this project to 40 points under V4, which is certified. So it kind of gives you a sense that these projects can get to V4 relatively easily, recognizing that there are the new prerequisites. However, if I jump to the next slide, if we do the exact same measures but on a different type of project, a large custom home in a non-urban environment, you rescore it on just these same measures. What you see, if you add up the points and look at the bottom, you've got only 4 points for this project. So obviously this project would not get certified by doing just these measures. Now you could argue this is a little bit of an unfair comparison, but the point that it makes is that the size of the project in terms of whether it's larger or smaller than average, and the location of the project where it is, as well as the market segment itself, has a huge impact in terms of how projects will score in V4. And so if I don't leave you with any other message than that, hopefully I've helped you along the way. So having said that, let me just kind of remind you, here is what I said I wanted to do, and hopefully you feel I've accomplished it. I've kind of summarized the changes to the process and the tools in the rating system. We've talked about, at a high level, the changes to the rating system. And I've tried to show you how those projects will be affected, scored under the current system in V4. And in terms of my last objective, where to learn more, again, I want to invite you warmly to join us for the webinar starting on Wednesday, I believe it's May 4th at noon. And we'll be doing it every Wednesday thereafter, one per credit category. And again, we'll be making it very practical, showing you exactly how to score on the new workbook and what things look like. So I do hope you can join us for that. So my last poll, and I do want you to answer this one, I would like to see where you stand in terms of V4 and how you feel the improvements add up for you and your projects. And again, recognizing this has just been a quick intro. I'll give you a minute to make your choice. Interesting mix. So I think arguably all of these changes are providing value, and based on the responses there, somewhat equally. It's interesting, if I back up here, the one that scored the weakest was increasing the relevance of the LEED brand. I think there could be an argument that the LEED has stayed the same for so long that it's due for a change, but obviously is there value to the customer is the more important question with those changes. So here's a summary of the examples that I did here, shown in sort of a different format if you're not a graphical person, but I think the key point here is in the far right column you can see that generally the certification is dropping about one level. If you score the project exactly the same, there is the opportunity with the new points to minimize that change. Sorry, I jumped too many slides here. Come on back. There we go. I did want to highlight that there's a number of places where the points changed fairly substantially. So that's what I mean by this first grouping of most beneficial changes. And there's another grouping at the bottom there which shows you what I think are some of the changes that make V4 a little bit more challenging and will require a little more extra efforts to get projects certified at the levels that maybe you'd like to see. And under that most challenging category, the first item I've got there is the loss of the easy wins, the credits that we're used to readily achieving. With them being removed, that definitely adds a layer of a challenge. So I would like to encourage you to learn more about V4, and in the pathway to do that, review a V4 case study. We will be injecting some real case studies into our webinars in May. Take one of your current projects and rescore it in V4. And if you're feeling really bold and adventurous, go ahead and register a new V4 project and get going. In terms of education, USGBC has provided some information. The link at the top is a table, if you haven't found that yet, that you'll find very helpful. It's a item by item 4-page summary table that ACE prepared. And down below are 4 webinars that ACE helped develop as well, category by category. They're roughly about an hour each, so those are very informative. And here is the notice of our 9-part series. This actually is currently posted on the USGBC education site. So if you're overly anxious, you can jump right in and look at the 9 modules that we developed 2 years ago. But we are going to do this comprehensive overhaul and redo all of them coming up, and I really do hope you can join us. So that's what I had prepared to say, and I hope I've helped to guide you in your early understanding of V4. But hopefully I've inspired you to dig deeper. This quote kind of caught my eye, maybe to challenge you a little bit to recognize that, yes, it will take a little bit of effort. And once again, I hope that you can join us in May. So thank you for your time. I really appreciate you joining us today. And I think Brett is going to moderate some questions. There may be a few accumulated in the chat box. We're pretty much at the top of the hour. If you have to run, I understand. If you can hang around, Brett and I have time here, and we'll try to take as many questions as we can. Again, this has been an overview. If you want detailed answers to your V4 questions, I'm going to ask you to come back in May.
Hey, great. Thanks, Jay. For those of you here on the live session, I see some questions piling in now. Feel free to throw some more in, and we're going to stick around here and try to get all of your questions answered. I am dropping a link in for the full webinar session that is going to be coming up here in the chat, as well as the 10% coupon code that you can use for that session too, if you want to attend it. So, so take a look for that in the chat box. But in the Q&A, I've seen some questions coming in here quite a while ago, and I want to make sure I get back to some of the original ones. You know, there was some discussion, and maybe you can just reiterate on that, Jay, about what's going on with accountability forms and durability testing now.
I assume the question relates specifically to V4 and what's going on.
Yeah, compared to
Sure.
what used to happen in 2008.
Sure. The accountability forms are gone. They do not exist in V4. Curiously, there is some legal language that exists in LEED Online when you register a project and you sign up to register, that you're making a commitment there to meeting the requirements of the rating system. So, you know, that was really the intent of the accountability forms, where the project team was taking ownership of their responsibility for certain things. So the way I'm understanding it is the accountability forms per se are gone, And now when the project team registers a project, they are basically there saying that we will abide by the requirements of the rating system. So that's the shift that's happening there. Under durability, the whole approach in terms of doing the durability evaluation and then the checklist corresponding based on the risk factors, that whole process has been abandoned as well. It's gone. What is now being used is the primary focus is on the Energy Star for Homes durability, the water management system checklist, I'm sorry. And if there is a third-party verification of that, because normally under Energy Star that's verified by the builder, so if that's verified by the Green Rater, a third-party verification of the water management system checklist, that qualifies for the durability credit. I believe it's only worth 1 point now as opposed to the 3 points, so it's been devalued somewhat because it is a narrower scope. But the intent of that, as I understand it, again, was to greatly streamline the durability process. There was a lot of angst over the amount of time and effort that it took to do that. And so what they wanted to do is to keep the focus on exterior water management and make sure that was being addressed. And the view was, in terms of streamlining the process, the water management system checklist was the best way to get there.
So staying on that topic, can you speak a little bit more about what's required when it comes to Energy Star 3 certification and the HVAC contractor credentialing?
I'll be honest and say I'm not 100% up to speed exactly on all the details of it. What my understanding is that the prerequisite is that you fully comply with the requirements of the Energy Star V3 program, including all of the checklists, and that would include the new HVAC commissioning checklist. And the expectation is that it is an HVAC contractor that has undergone the Energy Star training, and that they are an Energy Star partner. But curiously, there was a concern that some markets might not have sufficient number of trained HVAC contractors. So I think there's been a little bit of wiggle room there where you can apply for, I'll call it a waiver, if you can, prove that your market doesn't have trained HVAC contractors capable of doing it. And sort of as a reward to get there, that's why it's now worth a point in the V4 system that you make that extra effort to find the contractor and get it done.
So the follow-up question to that, and the way I guess the way I've seen the checklist, Jay, is that Energy Star 3 certification gets you an extra point, well, in 2008 right now. So if you guys are using 2008, you got a project coming up, and you haven't used Energy Star 3, you can use it now in 2008 and pick up an ID point. But as far as it goes in V4, you don't actually have to certify to it, but you get an extra point for using a credentialed contractor, and you get an extra point for actually completing the water management checklist. That's more of a based on what we've seen in the field anyway. And if there's no follow-up to that, that's great.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of very specific questions coming in, which is great, and I think a lot of these are going to definitely be answered in the full one. There was one here on renewables. So if you use renewable energy, do you automatically get the solar ready credit in V4?
Actually, I believe it's the opposite, that if you have the renewable, if you have solar panels, for example, on the house, then you can't get the solar ready credit. The solar ready credit, as I understand it, is if you put in the wiring so that in the future you can put the photovoltaics on. Now, there may have been some interpretations on that, but I'm pretty sure the early language said that that was only available if you did not put the solar on, because obviously you're going to get credit for putting the solar panels on under the overall energy performance credit in EA.
Thanks. Maybe you'll understand this question, Jay, from Chris here. Maybe we can have it reworded. What is ETS, new multifamily low-rise credit?
Well, ETS is environmental tobacco smoke, so this is the prereq and the new credit. So as I'm understanding it, the prereq is that there's no smoking in the common areas of the building or outside the front entry, and the credit is if there's a no smoking policy within the building. And so, the crux of it comes down to is what constitutes a no smoking policy. Obviously, it's a little bit challenging. How do you control what people are doing inside the walls of their home? But my understanding is that there's some kind of a covenant within the building that says that you are not allowed to smoke within your home, and that the homeowner is expected to sign that. And that would apply to a multifamily, whether it's low-rise or mid-rise.
Right, thanks. So on, let's see, looking at here, Jay, just off the top of your head, what are some of the major changes in materials and resource section, MR section?
It's changed substantially. The waste management has been changed in a way where it's now focused on the pounds per square foot reduction relative to a reference. You can no longer get credit for a diversion rate, which was what most of the projects are currently doing. For example, you have whatever amount of waste goes to the landfill. You would get credit for what percentage of the total waste was diverted from going to the landfill. Now there's more of a calculation that has to be done, and based on the size of the building, it's determined what the reduction is relative to a reference home. So there's an allotment, pounds per square foot for a certain, reference home. Your home, whatever size it is, if you're getting a reduction from that reference home allotment, that's how you would score points. So that's very different, and in some ways I suspect more challenging, particularly for larger projects. And then under MR22, environmentally preferable products, the scope of that has been narrowed substantially. That used to be 8 points, and it's been squeezed down to about half of that. And the number of choices that exist have been streamlined substantially down as well, so that now there's, instead of a list of, literally about 30 things that you could choose from, I think we're now down to a list of maybe only about 10 things. The prerequisite with regards to framing waste factor, that's gone, so that's a major change. And then I believe the advanced framing credits have been streamlined or reduced as well. So the whole thing has been kind of squeezed down and tightened up, and it's now much more focused, I think, on the things that projects would typically be doing anyways. And obviously there's a lot of specifics there, but that's a much more detailed conversation.
Right. And then there's just one last question in regards to here's a pretty specific question. The other one's a little detailed, but with the reduced credits in V4, location or transportation accounts for 15 points or 14% of available credits. Do you worry that builders and developers not in urban areas will move away from LEED due to difficulty and increased cost to certify?
Well, it's a good question in the context of a project that is out in a rural area. So, basically those 15 points disappear. The other side of the coin, though, is that if you are already, currently successfully getting certified in a rural area, you weren't getting any of those points anyways. So yes, it's a little bit more challenging to get more points, but generally what I'm seeing is the one-to-one comparison. The LL, it isn't going to hurt you if you're currently doing rural projects. What's going to be, I think, more challenging is that some of the easy wins have gone away, so you've got to do something to make up for those. And given that those LL or LT points are off the table, yes, that is a little bit more challenging to climb back up the hill. I don't think that it eliminates those projects, but it definitely makes it more difficult.
Are there, I guess through the beta phase, have there been any alternative credit pathways or V4 specific CRIs that are available or being developed?
I can't answer that because they're doing the reviews for all V4 projects in-house. I am positive that there's a lot of thinking along those lines that's going on, and I'm hoping that those lessons will be shared with us, and obviously I will do my best to get my hands on that and share as much of that as I can in the May presentations.
All right, great. Well, that is all the questions that I see coming in. We're a little bit over time here, so thanks for sticking around, everyone. Thanks for Jay and your time here today. Like I said, there's a full V4 session currently hosted on the USGBC's channel, and then there's a newer iteration of that being developed here this summer. So make sure to check that out. I sent the link over to the chat. Thanks again for everyone's time, and thanks to Jay. Enjoy the rest of your week.
Thank you all.